2019 California rice harvest has come to an end. It's way too windy out here. Oh yeah, much better. Yeah, the 2019 California rice harvest has come to an end. It's the fourth harvest I've featured on Rice Farming TV and shared with you here on YouTube. In 2016, I was just a young, idealistic farmer who wanted to have fun and explain how rice is harvested in California. It was a relatively smooth harvest. The rice was standing, and we didn't suffer many breakdowns. In 2017, after a few extended heat waves that scorched the Sacramento Valley, our rice grew upwards excessively and eventually fell down flat. Yeah, our 2017 harvest was rough, having to slowly and meticulously cut all that lazy rice. And our 2018 harvest was riddled with breakdowns. The John Deere 9660 CTS blew a rotor drum. The John Deere CTS 2 shattered a windshield. The Kloss Lexion 585R dropped a track after a cracked gusset weld. Links to those harvest videos are down in the description. Yeah, those were three very different harvests. However, they all had one thing in common. We did maintain excellent yields. This year, however, it's a totally different story. Our 2019 rice crop stayed standing. Our harvest equipment kept running. As I mentioned in episode 112 titled The John Deere 9660 CTS Returns, everything started smoothly. Our yields were up, on the high end of average actually. We were cutting 10,000 pounds to the acre. I concluded the episode with our harvest on pause. We were cutting so fast we ran into unripe rice that was planted later in the spring. That's typical when harvest is running so smooth. We can cut faster in the fall than we could plant in the spring. Yeah, that's where we're at. And if you haven't seen that episode, check it out in the description, because later we'll build on some grain moisture concepts that I covered there. Anyway, a few days off, and with half our crop harvested, we started cutting again. And that's when our yields started to decrease. That's when the story of this year's harvest started to reveal itself. Now, as I conveyed in the opening of this episode, not every harvest is the same. And the story of every harvest starts back in the spring, before planting even. It starts with a shovel, with rainwater, and with mud. So let's look back to the beginning of the crop year in order to understand why our yields and the yields across the Sacramento Valley started to suffer. This year, like every year, at the end of winter, we rushed to remove the rainwater that filled our fields. We do so in hopes of starting tractor work in early April. In draining the water, we succeeded, but with heavy rainstorms in mid-April, we had no chance to start tractor work, to start breaking the soil. Our fields refilled with rainwater, our tractors sat idle. Our fields finally drained again in late April, and finally we were able to start the tractors. Three weeks later than we desired, we started working the soil, although in less than ideal conditions. Area of our fields were still muddy. Yeah, we risked getting our tractors stuck, but we needed to get started. We were already late. Fortunately, our old John Deere 8640 got us through the worst parts. The late April rains pushed our planting dates into early to mid-May. Historically, fields planted after mid-May show a loss in yield. They just aren't awarded the same ideal climate range during their growth, during their life cycle. Basically, we are pushing their reproductive phase further into the year when it begins to cool. This can prevent optimal self-pollination, thus decrease yields. What we were cutting in the second half of harvest was planted in the second week of May. And rather than yielding 10,000 pounds an acre, we were falling down to the low 9,000s and high 8,000s. The effect of those mid-May plant dates started showing up in the second half of our harvest. There's still great yields, not detrimental, but also 1,000 pounds difference per acre is nothing to shrug off. With the price of rice tight, every 100-pound sack is important. And of course, we continued on cutting as efficiently as we could. Now back to spring. With our entire crop planted within the first half of May, we thought it would be smooth sailing. But the third week of the month brought a couple severe rainstorms that dropped over 4 inches of rain across our already flood-irrigated fields. With a 30-day water hold due to a pest management application targeting competing weed pressure, we could not drain the water. Our fields were too deep. We suffered a bit of drift, seeds being pushed across the field by deep water and high winds. We potentially drowned out and killed some young rice in the deeper area of the fields. The rainwater diluted the pest management application, not allowing it to effectively treat the weeds. All this undoubtedly dinged our overall yield potential on top of the late start. Now back to harvest. It's important to note that aside from decreasing yields due to late planting dates and deep water, an additional risk of planting so late is the increased probability of running into fall rains during harvest. As you know from episode 112, we can't cut in the rain due to outside moisture. So everyone out in the valley was cutting as fast as they could, all at the same time, hoping to avoid running into any fall rain. So everyone's rice was ripe at the same time, and it goes back to the fact that everyone planted at the same time back in May, back after those spring rain delays. It created a tight planting window and resulted now in a tight harvesting window. In October, everyone in the valley had a ripe crop. We're all at harvest moisture. So naturally, we were all worried about rain interrupting our harvest. But it didn't rain. As a matter of fact, fortunately, the opposite happened. Strong north winds blew through the valley, helping drop the grain moisture of the rice, meaning everyone was harvesting and everyone's rice was ripe, and we all constantly had a lot of ripe rice ahead of us to harvest. Ideally, it's great for us rice farmers out in the field, although it's terrible for the crew at the rice dryers. So terrible, in fact, that they called and shut us down. We had ripe rice, we had tuned equipment, we had daylight, but we were shut down. We stopped, you see, because we were delivering rice to the dryers too fast, and the dryers couldn't keep up. They couldn't take the rice, dry it down to storage moisture, and move the crop out into storage while making room in the drying columns for more rice deliveries. This created the great 2019 rice harvest bottleneck. So the dryers, they shut us down midday so they could make time in the afternoon, evening, and night to dry the delivered rice and get it into storage, making space for the next day's deliveries. That was the idea, but we didn't stop cutting. No one stopped cutting. Yes, we stopped delivering at the dryer, but we kept cutting. We filled all of our trailers, we filled our bank out wagons and grain carts, we filled our combines, and then, only then, when we ran out of on-farm storage, did we stop cutting. We did this, and so did all the other growers in the area, because the rice was ready to be cut. And if we can cut, we'll cut. I mean, we're farmers, right? The moisture of the rice was so low after the north winds blew through, we could afford a percentage point bump storing the rice overnight. The next morning, we compounded the problem at the dryer. As soon as their gates opened, farmers around the area delivered loads after loads of rice that was cut the day before. Soon, in the early afternoon, we were shut down again. The dryer had reached capacity for the day. It's a cycle that continued through harvest. The only thing that saved us from all the extra stress and even more of a potential yield loss is that it didn't rain. Thank goodness it didn't rain. But the north winds continued to blow. That's when PG&E called and further compounded the problems at the dryer. They cut off power to much of the North State. This was, of course, a reactionary precaution after their culpability surrounding last year's campfire in Paradise, just 35 miles away from our fields. They cut the power during those, quote, high-risk wind events, hoping to avoid an electrical spark, hoping to avoid another out-of-control wildfire. A power surge during all this on and off shut down our co-op dryer in Biggs, only for a few seconds, but it was enough to jam the augers full of rice, enough to halt progress, a problem that could only be rectified by manually clearing the augers before restarting the system. That took time and set them back even further. Yeah, the dryers definitely received the brunt of farmers' stress this harvest, but crews there did an excellent job with what they were handed. Again, it could have been worse if rainy weather loomed in the near forecast. Ugh. The yields of the back half of our crop remained down through the end of harvest. The rain never came, and we finished without any major breakdowns. The story of this year was the weather. Spring rains delayed our planting, and fall winds rushed along our harvest. Both impacted the dryers and consequently slowed us down while the back half of our crop suffered a yield dip. That's the 2019 rice crop in a sentence, or in a video. Pretty exciting, I think. Harvest is over, but our work is still not done. We need to clean our equipment and prepare our fields for winter. We need to get rid of the rice straw that remains in our fields. And that, my friends, is the next topic for next week's episode of Rice Farming TV. A lot of you have been asking about the different methods in which we take care of our straw, and I'll be happy to explain. Well, I hope everyone had a great harvest, a great fall. Thank you for watching this episode of Rice Farming TV. Stay tuned next time, and I'll explain how we're cleaning up all that mess out there around here. Thanks for watching. Take care.